Welcome. Good evening. My name is Jenny, and on behalf of all the booksellers at the Vermont Bookshop, welcome to the bookstore, and thanks for coming out. If it's your first time, or many times, thanks for coming, and thank you for supporting our events. Please stick around after the reading to pick up a book, and Maria will stay and sign things. And our guest this evening is Maria Padian. She lives in Brunswick, Maine, but this town is not unfamiliar to her. She received a bachelor's degree from Middlebury College and a master's degree from the University of Virginia. She is a freelance writer, essayist, and author of young adult novels, including Brett McCarthy, Work in Progress, and Out of Nowhere, and Wrecked. The Center for Children's Book Bulletin remarks that Padian shows again and again that a story is always more complicated and more ordinary than it seems. Please welcome Maria Padian.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out on a cold night. I appreciate it. And it's so much fun to realize how many Middlebury people are in the room too. So thank you, alums. What I'm going to do, just talk to you a little briefly about my inspiration for this story. Read you the first chapter. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer some questions. But again, thank you so much for coming out tonight. A lot of times people say to me, where do you get your ideas? And, you know, stories come at you from a lot of different directions, but this one I can tell you exactly where the story came from. Because the phone rang, and it was my mother, whom some of you know. And, you know, some authors or some famous writers say you should start in media res, start in the middle. I think Kurt Vonnegut says start as close to the end as you can. But my mother, when she calls, always starts in the middle. So you pick up the phone, and all you hear is, Maria, why do they do that? Why do they do that? And I'm like, and now you have to understand the they in question was Habitat for Humanity. Because my mother had just come back from a fundraiser for Habitat for Humanity, and she called me because she knew that I had...
Maria, could you move a little closer? I'm having problems hearing.
Okay.
And that would be great.
How about that? I'll speak a little bit more loud.
Okay. Sorry.
And she knew that I had been a volunteer for Habitat for a variety of builds. And she and my dad had just come back from a fundraiser for Habitat for Humanity. And she was upset. And you know what mommy is like when she gets upset. And they had been sitting in the audience with the white tablecloths. And if you've never been to a Habitat fundraiser, you know that they bring in the family to meet all of the donors who are given, because Habitat likes to give to people. They don't want to just buy nails and boards. And the other thing you have to know about my mom is that my mom grew up in the Bronx as a Latina girl who didn't speak any English until she was 5 years old. And when this family was brought in to the room, she immediately identified with them because they were clearly a Hispanic family that came in, mom, dad, a bunch of kids, and they're up there on the stage and looking out into the sea of predominantly white, nice people who had given money. And my mother's empathy for the family being on display was very strong. And she says, Mom, Maria, why do they have to bring them up there and exploit them like that? And, you know, they had a teenage daughter who looked like she wanted to just sink through the floor. And I found myself arguing with my mother. And I said, well, you know, Mom, Habitat knows that people don't want to just give to nails and boards. They want to donate to people. And I said, you know, Mom, this isn't a charity. These people are rock stars. You know, they're going to build their own house and pay a mortgage. And I suddenly realized, why am I arguing with my mother? Why am I not listening to her and trying to understand what she's feeling in this moment? Because my growing up was not hers. Because my mom, who grew up in the Bronx and spoke only Spanish, married my dad, who was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Irish guy from Manhattan who didn't speak a word of English. Excuse me, didn't speak a word of Spanish. I could only describe it as if it was like West Side Story. And imagine Chino missed, and Tony and Maria got away and moved to Jersey, raised a bunch of kids, and sent one of them to Middlebury. And this was my growing up. And so my childhood and my experience was very, hey you, there's a chair for you right here. Okay. Thank you so much for coming.
I'm glad to be here.
So what I realized, and when you see where do stories begin, I realized that 16-year-old girl that my mother saw on that stage was going to be my story. And I needed to understand who she was And I spent a lot of time talking to my mother in order to write this story. So How to Build a Heart, the narrator is a 16-year-old girl named Izzy, who is half Spanish. Her mother is from Puerto Rico, and her dad is a white Anglo guy from North Carolina. Her dad is dead. He was a vet, and so she and her single mom and little brother have moved a lot from place to place, looking for better jobs, for a better home. And what ultimately happens in the arc of the story is that they've been chosen by Habitat for Humanity to build a home, which comes with a lot of benefits. It's the realization of a dream, the permanence she's always looked for. But Izzy has not always told people a lot about her backstory, and she has a lot of secrets. And suddenly, she has to get on that stage. And a lot of the secret parts of her life are going to be made apparent to a lot of the kids that she knows. And so that is the story that I wrote, based on that phone call with my mother, who Carol knows very well. So I'm going to read the first chapter of How to Build a Heart. If anybody has any questions afterwards, we could talk about it. It's just the first chapter is about 12 pages, and in the opening scene, Izzy is in a car with her best friend, Roz. And that's all I'm going to tell you. You do realize you're a stalker, right? One corner of Roz's mouth curls up, her version of a smile. A full-on smile is rare from Roz. Not that I'd see one now. I speak to her profile as she powers her mother's rust bucket of a car along the winding roads of McMansion land. She's intent on her target and keeps her eyes focused forward. "Yeah, Izzy?" she says. "So what does that make you?" Great question, and not without a little edge. Roz's comebacks are razors. I'm not half as sharp, so I don't say what pops into my head. Mommy's voice, in Spanish. She always doles out her wisdom and warnings in Spanish, even though she knows my Spanish sucks. Dime con quien andes, y te diré quién eres. In other words, tell me who you're hanging out with, and I'll tell you who you are. Which is code for, I don't like your friends, Isabella. Which translates to, especially Roz Jenkins, which is muy inconvenient since Roz is my best friend and lives across the road from us. Instead of a comeback, I make my best innocent face. Me? Just along for the ride. Roz laughs, this quick punch of sound. Like the smile, a full-on laugh from her is rare. Accessory to crime, more like, she says. I throw my hands up in surrender. Honestly, officer, she said she was just giving me a lift home from school. I had no idea she was hunting hot guys. The corner of Roz's mouth curls down. These guys are not hot. They're douchebags, she corrects me. Right, I say. I'm just curious is all. Obsessed, more like. I don't bother to argue. What else would you call our latest detour into the outer reaches of Clayton, Virginia? Miles from lovely Meadowbrook Gardens mobile home park, where we live. I've cruised these back roads with her 7 times, occasionally catching a glimpse of a huge house with a 3-car garage set back in the trees. There's not much else to see in McMansion land, Roz's term for where the rich, superficial, fake assholes from her high school live. 7 times. And that's not counting how many trips I'll bet she's made out here by herself. These people fascinate me, Roz continues. Admit it. Don't you love when you lift a rock and all the bugs scuttle? Totally. Love doing that. I agree. But we're not lifting anything here with these drive-bys. It's more like we're sitting 3 feet from the rock, staring at it, waiting for bugs. We'll see bugs tonight, she assures me. I smile, but glance down at my watch. I can only be so late before Mommy suspects something. She knows I had a cappella practice after school today, so I would have had to catch the late bus or else wrangle a lift with one of the other St. Veronica's girls driving back to Clayton. She doesn't know Roz pulled up as I was leaving the building. Lured me in with her irresistible, "Hey, Chica, going my way?" I'm not supposed to be driving with Roz. I'm not supposed to be hanging out alone with Roz. There are actually a whole bunch of mommy-imposed Roz rules, and while this scenario has never been specifically forbidden, cruising the back roads where Clayton's millionaires live is probably a violation. Tell me again how this time is different, I ask her. Roz sighs her, "Let me explain it to you again, stupid," sigh. The boys' basketball team has made it into the playoffs. They're having a celebration pasta party at the Shackleton's house. For a second, I'm not sure who she means. Roz usually refers to her crush simply as Hot Sam. She never uses his last name. And would never admit he's her crush. But I've heard enough about Sam Shackleton's hair, dark brown with red highlights, and eyes, sky blue, and hookshot, Sam is the leading scorer, and friends, all douchey, and car, Jeep Cherokee, and biatch of a girlfriend, awful Melissa, to know my friend is way into it. Cool, I say. I love pasta, but couldn't we have swung home first so I could change? Roz pulls her eyes from the road for one moment so she can strafe the length of my school uniform. White cotton blouse, green and navy pleated skirt, navy knee socks, with a withering glance. You know, that getup is so retro, it's practically in, she comments. Vintage, I agree. I think my mother wore something just like it when she was in high school. It screams future nun. Does it come with a chastity belt? No, but they do require matching underwear. Roz's eyes widen. Green and navy thongs with the St. Veronica Catholic School seal on the back. There's a long moment before Roz gets the joke. When she does, she releases one hand from the steering wheel to flick my knee. The polish on her blunt nails is blue-black and chipped. I'll bet at your school it's a sin to say thong, never mind wear one, she says. You got that right. We're not invited, Izzy. Duh. But I know how we can see what's going on, she adds. Why does that make me nervous, I say, glancing out the passenger side window. We're passing the hilly, horsey part of Clayton, officially known as Clayton County, with fields that extend for miles, crisscrossed by white fences. A few massive brick houses are scattered in the distance, ringed with trees. I know from past excursions that Hot Sam lives in the more woodsy, less horsey part, where each home is hidden at the end of a street-long driveway, except there's no street sign, only mailboxes with a single number. You're nervous because you're a dork, Roz tells me. Really? I say. Not about my dorkiness. We both agree that I am the complete dork inverse to Roz's total badassedness. I think I'm nervous because you haven't let me in on the plan. Is there a plan? Upward curl in the mouth corner again. Oh yeah, she says. That's all. We reach the section of road where Hot Sam lives. Roz always points it out when we drive past. A quarter of a mile before his driveway, however, she turns off onto a packed dirt entrance. It extends unevenly into the woods, and we bounce in the suspension-challenged car. Tree stumps, freshly hacked, line the way, and it smells like wet pine. This dirtway eventually opens into a construction site and the skeleton of a half-built McMansion. A porta-potty and a carpenter's trailer are the dead giveaways that this is a work in progress. But it's long after hours, so no one's here, except us. Roz pulls alongside the porta-potty and cuts the engine. Well, this is fun, I say. She swivels in her seat so I can see her face on. The thin wire ring that loops through her left nostril, the blue highlights in her not quite blonde hair, verging on purple in the dusk. A few hundred yards through the woods, that way, she says, tilting her head in the intended direction, is Sam's backyard. An unpleasant chill begins at the base of my skull and runs down the length of my spine. There's a little pool house and a rock wall close to the back deck. From there you can see right in. They have a huge flat screen on one wall. I could pretty much watch a whole movie on Netflix the other night, without the sound, of course. I feel my heart pick up the pace. Wait, you spy on his house? Jeez, Roz, I was kidding about the stalker thing. I don't know what else to say. This is creepy and a little sad. And okay, I'll admit it. Kind of badass. She waves her hand, batting away my shot like it's an annoying mosquito. Please, it's not like I'm taking photos or anything, just observing the douche in his native habitat. I can't help it. I laugh. Only Roz could blur the lines between a scientist studying primates and a nosy teen spying. Come on, she nudges me. You know you want to look. No way. Chicken? Totally. That's my middle name. Isabella Chicken Crawford. Roz shrugs. She swings open her car door. Suit yourself, she replies, and heads into the woods in the direction of the Shackleton house. I watch as she disappears into the shadowy arch of branches. It's very quiet out here by the porta-potty. The eyeless, gaping holes in the McMansion's window frames remind me of this painting I learned about in art class. It's called The Scream. What the hell, I hear myself mutter as I climb out of the car. I dodge low limbs and pick my way between fallen trees in pursuit of Roz. There's no clear path, and I can only guess which way she went. I trudge maybe 100 feet when I hear this soft tapping sound. Rain on the leaves. Great, I really don't want to get soaked and lost. What is it they say about wandering in the woods? You walk in circles? I have zero outdoor survival skills. I'm not even a Girl Scout. I turn back toward the car. But then, a twig snaps. Is he? A fierce whisper, not far away. I peer into the gloom and can just make out Roz's outline alongside a tree. When I reach her, she yanks me close. Geez, make a little more noise, why don't you? She hisses in my ear. You're like an elephant crashing through. Sorry, I don't have your creeper skills. She points. Just ahead, we can make out a brightening through the trees. Voices, music. Stay close, Roz whispers, and be quiet. The sound and light increase as we approach the edge, the Shackletons' backyard. The wood's end had become lawn, become a patio with lots of furniture. Those wicker and cushion couches that look like indoor furniture someone hauled outside. How does that stuff not get totally ruined in the rain? Of course, there's a pool, rock walls and gardens, a grill. Actually, it's not a grill. It's an outdoor cooking and party mecca. At one end is a brick oven, neat pieces of wood packed in an iron ring to one side. At the other end is a massive metal meat cooking contraption that looks big enough to roast a pig. A couple of burners in case you want boiled corn, stone counters. My father would have loved it. Charlie Crawford, Grill King, who liked nothing better than loading his Weber with charcoal briquettes, his cooler with bottled drinks, and his backyard with buddies from his unit. Although it was never his backyard, just the patch of grass we shared with all the other families that lived in base housing. But that was ages ago. Charlie Crawford is long gone. A poke in the ribs from Roz pulls me back into the reality of wet woods and a party in progress. Beyond the patio is a huge house that seems to be all windows and glass doors. We can see into bright rooms filled with laughing boys watching some sports thing on TV. Roz was right, that is one seriously huge flat screen. She whispers in my ear, on the right, pool house. She points to a small wooden building at the edge of the patio. A low rock wall extends along one side. We can see great from there. She takes off, skirting the border of the lawn just inside the cover of the trees. I follow. When we near the little house, Roz darts to the rock wall. She dives behind it, lies flat on her belly, then twists her head around, signaling me with one hand to follow. I pause. I really don't want to leave my safe cover in the trees. Roz waves again, her brow furrowing in this "come on, move it" expression. A unison male cry from inside the house startles me. The whole roomful of boys is shouting and fist-pumping at the flat screen. Someone must have scored. It's my chance. As the entire team faces in the opposite direction, I race from the woods and hurl myself into the dirt alongside Roz. The ground is damp and soft. We're going to have to get really creative explaining to Mommy what happened to my white cotton blouse. Roz and I lock eyes behind the protection of the rock wall. Hers are round, bright. I've never seen her look so alive. She winks at me, then pulls herself into a crouch and peers over. I do the same. I can practically read the labels on the soda bottles lining the kitchen counters. That's how close we are. I count a dozen guys either strewn on sofas or shoveling food onto plates, while a low background pulse of music competes with the sports commentator's voice on the television. 2 adults, a mom, a dad, weave among them, passing out napkins, laughing at something one of them says. What a bunch of assholes, I hear Roz mutter. Not for the first time. I don't respond. I don't know these people. And even when I have given her some pushback, wondering how it's possible that every person at Clayton County High School could be an asshole, she just says, "You're new here." Which is true. Skinny guy on the couch with the Kawhi Leonard cornrows, green shirt, she begins. I have no idea who Kawhi Leonard is, but I see a boy in a green t-shirt eating spaghetti. That's Darius Jones. He's co-captain with Sam. What a jerk. And she's off, filling my ear with all of Ned Perkins's, Isaiah Green's, John Mayhew's damning qualities, from their expensive cars to their outrageous sneakers to their terrible girlfriends, especially their girlfriends, with Hot Sam's, all for Melissa, ranking as undeniable queen of the worst. It's amazing what she knows and what I know secondhand about these people. I live in fear that if I do eventually cross paths with one of them, I'll slip and say, "Oh my God, you're Cassie who cheats on the vocab tests," or "You're Eric who asked 9 girls to homecoming." I mean, not really. I wouldn't say something that stupid. But all this info I shouldn't know would be screaming around my head, and something might pop from my mouth. "Who are you?" they'd wonder. Dark-haired, green-eyed girl I've never met, but seems to know me. Sometimes I think I should tell Roz not to tell me anymore. Fascinating as it all is, I don't want to slip. I hate slipping. Before she points out anyone else, a shadow falls across the deck. Someone stands at the sliding door, about to open it. "Frank, here boy," we hear through the glass. A dog, one of those little bug-eyed dudes that are so ugly they're actually cute, appears at his heel. "Uh-oh," Roz whispers as the door opens and the dog skitters out. I'm too busy thinking Frank is a completely hilarious name for a dog to realize this is not good. Frank lifts his leg and is about halfway through his whiz on one of the Shackleton's bushes when he aims his nose in our direction. I can see his nostrils quiver. Our scent is a balloon floating inches from his smushy face. Whiz over, he takes 2 steps towards us and growls. The boy who let him out calls, "Come on, Frank, inside." I feel Roz squeeze my arm. "That's Sam," she says. Frank barks. "Frank!" Sam insists, clapping. Frank ignores him, his toenails scraping the flagstones as he advances. "Go, go, go!" Roz hisses in my ear. She doesn't stand. She rolls away from the wall until she's at the edge of the woods. Then, at half crouch, she bolts. She doesn't slink quietly now. She crashes through the underbrush like a herd of elephants. Frank, with a full-throated yap, tears after her, leaving me, Isabella Chicken Crawford, frozen in the mud behind the Shackletons' garden wall. "Damn," I hear. Way too close. Hot Sam has crossed the patio and now sounds like he's about 5 feet away. Not that I'm about to lift my head and confirm that distance. "Frank!" He claps again. He whistles loudly, one of those 2 fingers in your mouth dog whistles. Then a woman's voice from the house. "Honey, what's wrong?" "I think Frank is chasing something. He just ran off." "Oh no, I hope it's not a porcupine again." "Serve him right, dumb dog," Sam mutters. He claps again. "Here, boy!" I can tell from the sound that he's crossed the lawn, and his back is to me, which means this is my moment. Before I second-guess myself, I roll, Roz-like, only toward the little pool house. As soon as I reach it, I duck behind it. I peer around the side. I guessed right. Sam stands at the edge of the woods and isn't looking anywhere in my direction. "Frank!" He yells into the darkness. "Sam, come on in. It's raining," I hear the woman saying. "He always comes back." I read hesitation in the boy's shoulders, but he turns. The light from the house falls on his face, and for 1 second, before I pull back behind the protection of the shadows, I get a look at the most gorgeous boy I've ever imagined. Not seen, imagined. Because that's how incredibly well God constructed Sam Shackleton. You almost can't believe it. I wait until I hear steps on the deck and the sliding glass door open and shut. The coast is clear, but it's full-on dark now. No way am I heading back into those woods. I will get lost. Or run into Frank. My best option is to get to the main road and walk to the construction site where Roz parked and where she's, hopefully, waiting for me. The Shackletons' long driveway is lined with cars from the basketball boys, and I duck behind each of them as I make my way toward the road. The rain has picked up, and my blouse clings to me like plastic wrap. My soaked skirt winds wetly against my knees. My waterlogged sneakers squinch. There is no way I'm going to be able to explain this to Mommy. At the end of the driveway, I turn left and am blinded by headlights from a car parked a few feet from the Shackletons' mailbox. I almost fall backwards. Then I hear, "Izzy, get in!" Roz! She's pulled the car just off to one side, so it's half on the road, half in the ditch. The passenger door swings wide. I scramble in, still blinking from the light. I land on something warm and wet. "Frank!" He whimpers and jumps into the back seat. "Oh my God, what's he doing here?" Roz reaches back and scratches the top of the dog's head. "He caught up with me in the woods, and the only way I could get him to shut up was to pick him up. He's actually very friendly." What are you doing here? I demand. Why aren't you waiting for me back where we parked? I don't add. Do I have perfect timing or what? She says. Frank barks, as if he's agreeing with her. So, what happens next? I ask. We add dog nabbing to the list of this evening's entertainment? You want him? Roz asks. The rodent might get jealous. Roz isn't a fan of our dog, Paquito Schultz. Paco for short. A dachshund Chihuahua mix, he once nipped her when she accidentally stepped on his tail. Since then, she only refers to him as the rodent. Seriously, Roz. Take him back, I guess. Oh, and how's that? Knock on the door and say, hey, while we were trespassing on your property and stalking your son, we stole your dog. Here he is, bye. Roz does one of her sort of laughs, but I wasn't trying to be funny. Nah, you can just carry him to their yard and let him go. They'll probably scratch at the door and they'll let him in. She looks at me, waiting. Hold on, what you are you talking about? They know me, Izzy. I can't carry Frank back. I didn't steal him. Neither did I. It was a rescue. He followed me and would have gotten lost. Oh, that's a pile of... Don't swear, Isabella, Roz interrupts. Frank barks again. You know swearing is a sin. For some reason, this pisses me off more than anything else. It's not like she doesn't make Catholic jokes 24/7, but right now, in my wet, muddy uniform, way late getting home, and facing a tirade from Mommy about violating the Roz rules, I'm in no mood for jokes about sin. I reach behind the seat, grab Frank by his collar, and pull him into my lap. He gazes at me with his bulging bug eyes and licks the tip of my nose. You're lucky I like pugs, I tell him. I turn to Roz. Just so you know, I'm doing this because if we leave the dog out here, he might get hit by a car. You're so good, Izzy. Or should I call you Saint Isabella? And for the record, I'm not the one who's chicken. You are. No retort. I got her there. I climb out of the car, dog in my arms, and retrace my steps down the long, dark driveway. When the lights of the house come into view, Frank begins to squirm. I let him down, and he rockets off. I treat myself to one last look at the Shackletons' glowing house, then hustle back to the car. Roz has the engine running and pulls away the moment I close the door. Neither of us speaks for a while. I told you we'd see bugs, Roz says, finally breaking the stalemate. I saw Sam, I tell her. She glances at me, waiting. One hell of a bug. Hell of a bug, she agrees. Another moment of silence, and then the two of us give in to the adrenaline and begin laughing hysterically. It's amazing how quickly I forgive her. Thank you for coming. Does anybody have any questions? No? That's okay. I won't call on anybody.
Now, did you actually research a place? The roads, are they really there? Or?
I set this book in Virginia because I was at the University of Virginia and I just felt like going back imaginatively. There was no reason for why I set it there. And so I do have the landscape in my mind as I'm writing it. Like there's a town in this book that's basically Crozet. And so it's just fun. It was just fun to put it there. Yeah. Did you have?
I was just wondering, so all of your books have been young adult books?
Yes.
And I guess I'm curious as to why or how that came about, you know.
I think partly it was because my first novel was young adult. I had young adults living home.
Okay.
And I was revisited with some of the stuff they were going through.
Mm-hmm.
It just reminded me of issues that I had had when I was that age, but suddenly I was seeing it from an adult's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had the issues in my mind, I had the kid's voice in my head, and all of a sudden I had this 14-year-old narrator, and I was able to write the story from that perspective. I think I've stuck with this genre because the books that I read at that age have burned a hole in my heart. I remember all of them. I could tell you what the illustrations were like. I would read a book 10 times. I have a hard time reading an adult book that I read last week. And say, oh God, what did we read for book group? So those books meant a lot to me, and also I like writing for teenagers. You know, higher highs, lower lows. You got to take them on this emotional roller coaster and create characters they love and characters they hate. And so I enjoy that. I enjoy that. So,
That's interesting.
What were the books that really stuck with you?
okay, I love The Witch Blackbird Pond.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I love Johnny Tremaine.
Oh.
I know, Johnny Tremaine. Did I read it
Yeah.
15 times?
Wow.
But my favorite book of all times, ever, is Charlotte's Web. I mean, I still
sure.
cry when the spider dies.
Yes.
I'm tutoring a kid now who's from Democratic Republic of Congo, and we're trying to find a book, and we're reading Charlotte's Web together. That's
Great.
yeah. So, and as I'm reading it, I keep saying, "Isn't this good?" Isn't this good?" He's kind of getting it, so yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. Great choice.
Well, thank you so much. Oh yes.
Oh, I'm just curious of the YA fiction now. Who are the authors that you enjoy the most?
Wow, I am really enjoying Angie Thomas and Jason Reynolds, Erica Sanchez. So these are some authors that are doing some really interesting things. I mean, but I also, one of the books that I use when I'm teaching a creative writing class, I'll teach Hunger Games and Suzanne Collins, because it's just like the pacing, and it's such a template for how you write in this genre. The way you like get to the end of the chapter and you're like, oh my gosh, I gotta turn the page again. There's almost too much to even mention. I feel like there's a lot going on in this genre right now. I'm really excited about it. Yeah.
So I have a question about this genre. My daughter worked in a bookstore in the mid-aughts, like from 2004 to 2011, 12. And she introduced me to the concept that Mom, you might like to read young adult books because they're a quick read. They don't take forever. But at that time, the other thing she said, they deal with important issues that you would want to read about, that would resonate with you. But there won't be any sex, there won't be any violence.
Well, there might be some sex and violence.
Of the type that bothers you in adult books.
Yeah.
So I wondered nowadays whether some of that has changed or whether it's still more readable.
In terms of content, it's really hard to know. Like they have there's middle grade, and like I'll have a book that's called young adult. All my stuff has been called young adult, but some of my narrators are 8th graders, and some of my narrators are freshmen in college. So it's a range, and it's and when I write and my narrators are freshmen in college, I've got my publisher saying to me, "Ooh, make them a little younger next time." And my stuff with the 8th graders, I've got 5th to 7th graders reading it. So it's a range. It's a range, and I would also say too that depending on who you want to pick up the book, that's how you're going to determine your content and your language. It's very intentional. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not with the sex and the violence piece, it was not the fact of, but the graphic details.
Yeah,
or
the way.
the emotional details. It
Right.
was that
Right.
I skip over that when I read adult
Yeah.
stuff.
And I think too, particularly for young adult stuff that they're saying is you've got to write about what it is that teenagers care about. And I tend to, a lot of my stuff is topical, but I have to write about it in a way that the story is still about teenagers and what they care about, and it's about relationships, all the relationships, the friends, the guys, the parent, all the relationships. That has to be.
So here we are, mostly adults, and I'm wondering about how you reach YA readers. And
That's a good question.
right? I mean, a real challenge.
So for me,
Most demands on their time, most distractions, all of it. How do they find you?
I go into schools a lot. So especially with the book tour, a lot of what I'm doing is in addition to going to bookstore, I'll go into high school. And they'll pack the room and I'll read to the kids and the books will be in the library. So a lot of the kids are finding my books in libraries, in school libraries. So school librarians, God bless them.
Yep.
That's one of the ways. I'm going to go to Teen Book Con. So there's definitely certain conferences, etc. Kids are finding books online. Kids are finding books from other kids. So readers are passing the books. But so you had kids go through the school system, go through these ages. One of the things that I have found hard was I raised readers. My kids love to read. Then all of a sudden they hit high school, which is what most of my books are, and they have so much required reading, they could rarely read outside of school because it was so taken up. So that gets hard. that gets really hard, is how do I get these books into kids' hands? But I think it's also bricks and mortar bookstores and booksellers that are going to hand sell it. Well, so when a bookworm comes in, they know who it is. They say, you might like this.
Challenge.
That's it. One of my challenges is that I'm, let's say, older than a lot of young adult writers. Some of these young adult writers are in their 30s, and they are fun. They go on Instagram, and they have 40,000 followers. They're posing on the cover of Elle magazine, and they've got music, and they have got this social media thing going where kids are following them because they're characters in their own right. And I'm thinking, I'm 60 years old. I'm not going to be that 20-something author who's doing all that stuff. But that is one of the ways that some of the younger authors are connecting with younger readers to almost become little mini celebrities. I would love to be John Green. I'm just not. I'm just not. So, that's why I hang up on Green. And you have a new book coming out.
May 5th.
This is author Steve Kiernan here, who a lot of you probably also know. But I'm excited about that.
Thanks.
Gorgeous
We'll see.
cover.
Yeah, we'll see. No reviews yet, so therefore it's like pristine.
Yeah. Oh, reviews. Okay, so here's a question for writers. Do you go on Goodreads? Do you go on Goodreads and see what people post on Goodreads?
I post a review on Goodreads every Friday.
Oh, you do?
Yes,
Oh,
and
okay.
that's my blog, so I have followers there. That's my version of, I guess, the YA celebrity thing is a lot of people follow my reviews. But what people write about my books, I couldn't bear it.
Yeah, so you don't look at
I don't. Every once in a while, I will look at like the average review number,
Yeah.
and and you could just compare my different books.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you go on?
I shouldn't, but I do. I go on, and it's the Wild West of reviewing.
Yes.
Because you just, and so every once in a while you'll be sitting like, I'm happy with these 4s and 5s. This is okay. And all of a sudden you get like 2. I hated it. And you have to stop yourself from not commenting. And like you can't. It's like poking a gourd bull. You cannot go anywhere near a critic. But
Yes, and
it's
some of you
hard.
got it too because the book took 10 days to arrive.
Oh, that's
Wow.
true, I've seen them, yeah.
Oh, wow.
You know, just want to say, that's no words.
Yeah. And sometimes too, and this is the thing about young adult readers, you want them to connect emotionally with your work, like as if they're real people. That's the goal. And sometimes I'll get these teenagers who will read the book and go, she made me so mad when she didn't apologize to Roz. 1. But wait a minute, you're reacting exactly the way I wanted you to. Like, you didn't necessarily have to agree with what the character did, but the fact that you were so engaged, doesn't that say something? And I'm like, no, you shouldn't have done that. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
That's so funny.
Yeah. But that's an interesting thought, that Goodreads is also a way to engage with and have readers find your book.
I read a lot, and so every Friday it's on. I put it on all the social media, and
Yeah.
I just whatever I'm reading. Sometimes it's boring research books for, for my own work, or sometimes it's a new novel. And there's this Czech Republic writer who got the Nobel Prize, the shared Nobel Prize for Literature last year, and I read her most recent book, and it's really, really weird and cool. And I think, like, if I say, hey, this is a really weird but very cool book by somebody who won a Nobel Prize, and you wouldn't have read her, then and I put it on all the social media, right? Then that just becomes part of. That's my version of.
Yeah.
That's my nerdy version of flashing.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It's just, right.
That's a good idea, though.
Every Friday, and then that could people react, people respond. And so, because I can't just, this, what you want is for everyone in the world to buy and read your book.
In hardcover.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But how do you do that?
Yeah.
Social media wise is pretty hard to do.
Yeah. Are you going to hit the road?
I don't have a main gig.
Oh, well, you should give me a call. I know lots of good bookstores. Yes. And we have a main contingent that will turn out for you with enthusiasm.
I love it.
With Dan Kagan at the front of it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Very good. Okay, good.
So where are you in your travels of this?
Next, we're going to go to Hanover.
Okay.
They've got a brand new bookstore called Still North Books.
I haven't heard of it.
Oh, let's
Still
talk.
North?
Still North. It's a bar bookstore.
Oh.
It's where the old Dartmouth bookstore used to be.
Wow.
Yes, indeed. And they've got a stage, and they're looking for events.
Holy cow.
Yeah, yeah. So we're going to go there on Saturday because Mary Bora lives.
Mary Bora.
Remember Mary Bora?
Yeah, wow.
That's her nephew right there. Sorry, Dana. I can't help you out. Mary was really famous. But yeah, so Mary lives in Norwich. So
Okay.
she's coming with a cohort, and my daughter is in grad school there now. So she's coming with some
Wow.
friends. So we've
Well,
got
I'm
sort of a
doing the
little-
Norwich bookstore, so I don't know that I can.
Oh, you are going to do?
Yeah.
That's going to be. Oh, you already booked for the Norwich
I
bookstore.
am. They've been really good to me.
Yeah, so that's right across the river.
Yeah.
You
so that
probably
would
couldn't do
work.
both.
Yeah. Good to know though.
Good. We'll just go in and say hello. Make sure they've got your books.
I'll do that. And also
Facing
Lisa's
out.
selling that bookstore to me. When she sells it, I'll go across the
Yeah.
river.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Steve was the person who introduced me to the Face Out Club. He says whenever you go into a bookstore, you have to find your friends' books and make sure they're all facing out.
Oh.
Not on the side, you see? Facing out. So you would take it out and you go,
That's so funny.
Face out.
and I do it. I really walk in, I look for friends' books, yours included, Steve.
God bless
and,
you.
I'll
Yeah,
just put it
same
on
to
face.
you.
And then I'll take a picture and I'll send it to them and say, guess what?
So-
The Face Out Club.
Well, it's easy for me alphabetically because I'm next to Stephen King, and his books are always face out.
I just put your
Sorry. George Cujo sideways, and there's a lot of room.
There we go, yeah.
The wilderness needed.
Do you read most of the young adult fiction that does come out, or, I mean, there's so much to read.
Oh,
I mean,
too many books, too
I
many
know,
time.
I know.
I try to keep up. You know, ask my husband, my night table is the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It's always a big, so there's the books that I have to read. There's the books that I want to read.
Sure,
Then there's
sure.
the adult books from my
I
book
know,
club that I never
yeah.
get to, you know.
Because I get agita, to be honest, because I have 100 books, seriously, by my night table. And I'm thinking, how am I ever going to read this? And then, but I keep getting more. It's like, I'm compulsion. You know.
You know in The Hobbit how the dragon sleeps on his hoard? That's just how I think of my bedside. It's just like I'm just sleeping on my hoard.
And don't you wish too that you just like put them over, because I fall asleep with them on my face, of course.
Oh.
It's like, and when I wake up, maybe it'll just have gone in through osmosis. And I'll just
Yeah,
put it up like that. I need to do better with books on tape.
It's a great way to.
That's a good way to do it, yeah.
Do you have a daily commute?
I don't have a daily commute, but I do have, every once in a while, like I need to go to Portland or so. Yeah, so I definitely have time, but.
Anytime you got more than 15 minutes, you get a couple of chapters.
Yeah,
how
no,
I
that's
took it.
right.
Yeah.
That'd be
really right.
yeah. So, anyway, thank you everyone for coming out tonight.
Are you
Thank
getting-
you.
are you getting